calling all millionaires and future millionaires. Welcome to Go to Millions. I'm Ari Murray. Nice to meet you. This is go-to-market strategy for the big dogs. Woof, woof. Sit back, relax, or go get your steps, or add stuff to your cart. That's 100% what I recommend you do. Whatever you do, please pay close attention to these million-dollar ideas from the biggest and baddest operators and founders in the entire world. Off we go. Hi, how are you? Hope you're having a beautiful, beautiful day. I recorded this with my friend Matt as a virtual event, and today we're going to talk about all things Huron, my favorite men's personal care brand, and how Matt got his start, what he's doing with his brand, and why you're going to love it. Off we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Terrible mobile shopping experiences suck. And if you think so, then so do your customers. Want to know how to create a seamless app and premium mobile experience? Visit Tapcart. Turn your Shopify store into the perfect mobile app at tapcart.com/millions. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It means the world. I'm Ari, and this is Go to Millions. I am joined today by my friend Matt, who is CEO and co-founder of Huron, which is my favorite men's personal care brand in the whole world. He'll tell you all about it, and we're going to hear their story. Matt, come on out.
How you doing? All right.
Good. I've missed you. It's been 30 seconds. How are we today?
Doing great. Busy, but busy is good.
Amazing. Well, aside from our bonding over Cincinnati, we've got lots to talk about today. And for everyone who's tuning in, thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat. We'll do a Q&A at the very end. And if there's no questions, it'll be humiliating. So please don't do that to us. But I will get us started right now. How did you get into e-com or even into this entire space? And was it intentional or did you fall in?
So my, entryway into the space might have happened before most. So I was an early employee at Bonobos in 2008. And that was before any cute e-commerce acronyms. So there were brands or DNVB brands. We were a company who sold brightly colored men's pants online, which is kind of like a marble mouth description of what we were doing, but spent 2 years there, loved every second of it, really kind of cut my teeth in like the early stage growth consumer area, but also just an affinity for customer experience and connecting with the end consumer, which sounds crazy, but was quite novel at that point. So fast forward a little bit in my professional career, I had a few pit stops kind of in the traditional financial realm in investment banking and private equity for a little bit, went to grad school and then launched Huron shortly thereafter with my co-founder, Matt. So kind of my second foray into e-commerce, if you will. But I think what's been super interesting for me personally is kind of the full circle experience with e-commerce and the driving factor or my personal affinity for being in the broader personal care space is really twofold. While I was an investor, I looked at a bunch of traditional beauty cosmetics brands. So I was always intrigued professionally by the space. But I think probably more relevant on the personal side of things, like I was just the kid that grew up with bad skin. So I had tried everything under the sun, nothing worked. Did Accutane twice, which was not an enjoyable experience.
It makes you so nauseous. It's awful.
Yeah, no, it was not fun. So what was always interesting to me was kind of like, how do you connect these two very disparate worlds of amazing products, super clean technologies, efficacious ingredients, brought down to the consumer who either might not even know where to start or was quite frankly like so awkwarded out, was just kind of like fine, like continuing on the path as usual, just like not even willing to explore. So that was kind of like the early innings premise of Huron, based largely on kind of like my personal struggles, quite frankly. And what's been super compelling for me personally is like, we know who we're fighting for each and every day because it was me 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we've been on this journey for a little over 3.5 years, but I tell people like, I haven't worked a day in 4 years.
I love that.
Because we feel like we're helping out a consumer who could use it, quite frankly. So it's been super, super fun.
I love that you said you know who you're fighting for, because if you lose sight of that, you can't make it. But if you are that consumer, you like can put yourself in the shoes of the person you're helping, because that's why you even started this thing. So no wonder it hit so hard. How did you come up with the name?
So in 2014, I was working for my private equity firm, and one of my bosses at the time, this is probably like when my skin was like really bad. It was like right when I was Accutane for a second time. And one of my bosses approached me after a meeting and said, hey, like, we can't take you to any more management meetings until you kind of fix this. This was like my base.
That's so mean.
I was like, oh, okay, interesting. But I was living on Huron Street at the time in Chicago. So as we were kind of going through the brand building process in late 2017, early 18, obviously you look at 10,000 names, you look at URLs, you look at trademarks, you look at social handles, you look at all of these things. And it's really hard to evaluate a name in a vacuum, right? You kind of have to see how it looks on packaging, how it will look on a website, how it will look on a billboard, et cetera. And I think for me, what was interesting is like that name just really struck a chord, obviously, like given my experience, kind of like that feedback, quite frankly. And I think that's even just been more ammo for me personally to kind of continue to fight and push and develop and work towards kind of helping this consumer out. So that's kind of the genesis of the name. But for me personally, it's really exciting.
It can probably always remind you of that time on Huron Street where it all came to be. And it's a good like walk backwards and it'll
Totally.
always carry you. Yeah, I hate that story though. I'm not gonna lie. That is so mean. Like, I hope that can't happen anymore. But yeah, it's hard out there. People are awful. That's all we know for sure.
It's a good motivating factor.
Yes. Good fire. But I still, whoever said it, I hope that they have a bad life. So tell me about your day-to-day at Huron now. So you're obviously growing every day and I see you everywhere before. So context for everyone who's listening, Matt and I met through Go to Millions. I think you responded to one of my newsletters back in the day, but I'd already seen the brand and like been looking at it for my husband. So it was quite a big moment for me. I was like, oh wow, real people like that I look up to are reading this. So thank you. So how does your day look now and what are you really focusing on is like your core duties?
Yeah, good question. I mean, and this is like such a cliche answer, but every day is like actually totally different, which in the majority of our journey to date is really taxing mentally because there's no feeling of accomplishment intraday because you're like, oh my God, I'm just running from call to meeting to pitch to visit to you name it, customer email, and everything just feels very disjointed. And then at 7 p.m. at night, you're like, what have I done?
Yeah.
So a big learning for me actually is like kind of recapturing or retaking control of my own calendar. And one of the things that I instituted about 6 months ago is basically every day from 8:30 to 11, I just block off and I try and get one thing done. That's like, I call it my big, hairy, audacious goal. And like, that's the one thing that I have to do that day so that regardless of what happens the rest of the day, I feel somewhat accomplished and knocking like a pretty big item off the to-do list. But we're a super lean team. So we're a team of 5. They're all sprinting in a number of different directions. So what kind of my day-to-day looks like is oftentimes like morning check-ins after 11 a.m. Morning check-ins with the team. We have one remote team member in Ohio. The rest of us are in our office in New York. But it's understanding kind of what they're working on, but more importantly, what I can do or what we can do to support what they're working on. I think that's the biggest misnomer from maybe someone in the founder seat or CEO seat. It's not what this person needs to do for me, but like, what can we do to support the members of our team so that they can be successful in their day-to-day and their week-to-week and month-to-month. So it's oftentimes like that first question, like, what can I help you with or what can we help you with? So it's understanding kind of the needs of the team. And then it's kind of all over the board. It's check-ins from our partners who are helping manage channels. It's constant communications with our distribution and fulfillment center. We do a ton of proactive and reactive consumer outreach, not simply just, hey, UPS lost my order. Like, what's the deal?
Right.
But we have a series of like post-purchase flows, which I've tweeted about a few times, where someone from Cincinnati spent over X and it's their 4th order. Like, I'll automatically get an email. So I do a lot of outreach that way. So it's really all over the board. But that's also what makes it fun.
When you were thinking about the brand and when you and your partners were deciding this is the direction we're going in, how did you decide it would be like strictly marketed as a men's care brand? Like, how did you decide that this is the specific core like niche for us? Because I use your product sometimes.
And I promise you, you are not an N of one.
Yes, I know I'm not, because they're really good. It smells so good. You can't.
Thank you. I also feel like my wife has like bathrooms full of stuff, and
Yeah.
it's like, how are these jumbos gone so quickly? And she's like, oh, I use it too. I'm like, perfect.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, Daniel's like, Ari, this is my, Daniel's like, this is my body wash. I'm like, well, I don't know. I found it. So
Yeah, exactly. Two things. One, I think being your own customer is really, really important. And for me, I knew my own personal struggles and what it took for me to kind of like come across a brand that worked. And it was a lot of trial and error. So I think there's a lot of relatability in terms of kind of like my struggles and my own personal journey with personal care. So I felt like it was more authentic, even though I hate that word, given what my personal journey has been to kind of reach out to men's. And secondly, I just think the white space is huge, right? Like very broad brushstroke math. If you take half the population, chances are they're probably showering every day or times a week, let's hope. You know, how can we better serve that audience? And I still think that the world is kind of bifurcated today between super high price point items that maybe you get for Christmas once and you enjoy using it, but you're never going to buy those products for yourself, or the same products that we've been using since we were 10 years old that you could buy at CVS or Walgreens. And I think the white space is what's super interesting to me. And that's part of the origin story of Huron as well.
you're so right. Like people are always like, oh, you know, you need to make sure you give yourself a big enough core audience and enough people to sell to. But you're like, okay, I've got 150 million here in the country. And like there's fully enough people. And to your point, there's fewer brands that are focusing in on men. And so why not be one of the few that do it well? So I think it's great. But yeah, I still use it, especially the eucalyptus body wash.
And I think that's all you net.
Yeah.
It was one of your newsletters that I think you were championing how much you love eucalyptus. I'm like, we might have something for you. I do think one of the really interesting lines of demarcation for us in this category, though, is actually the difference oftentimes between the customer and the consumer. I think we get a lot of anecdotal feedback that, like you buying for Daniel, oftentimes the female, whether household partner, sister, roommate, whomever, is oftentimes buying in this category.
Yeah.
That's not the end consumer. So actually thinking about how can we communicate, it's totally fine for both to use this product while still staying true kind of our origin story, has been an interesting kind of like internal struggle a little bit. But I think we're making steps in the right direction to be more appealing to a broad set of ultimate end users.
I know you want to look after your customers in the best way possible, and that's got to be with a premium mobile-first experience. Whether you're selling beauty products or sportswear, give your biggest fans what they need, a mobile app. Upgrade your Shopify store with TapCart and create a beautiful app in just 2 weeks. Go to tapcart.com/millions today and get started with your first month free. There's like a long history, at least for me, of using men's products. So growing up, I always used the Old Spice deodorant, which I think a lot of women do, or girls back in the day. And that's definitely like the commercials. Nothing about the marketing is about me, but you can't help how it smells and how well it works. And so that, I think, is what your product does, where maybe I wasn't intending to use it for myself, but then once I see it or smell it, I was like, oh, well, won't you know, that will work for me just fine. It's almost like a sneaky little, like every time I use it, I'm like, I'm using it. So it kind of makes it a little more fun too.
Totally. And I think you hit on a really important point, which is consumers gravitate towards sensorial experiences, right? Like you love the scent of products, so you use the product. That's been a huge advantage and tailwind for us. My partner and co-founder, Matt, that is his background. He's one of the noses in the category. He's developed line fragrances for a number of celebrities. He built the majority of the men's Tom Ford line, was developing for Lab Series or the Estee Lauder Mola. So this is really his background. And as we think about scent and scent profiles and what is a safe space in scent, we're going to capture like the majority of folks, but also like how can you take a chance a little bit and maybe be a little bit more polarizing. I think we started to explore different directions across scent and olfactory by and large. And I think that's certainly an interesting opportunity for us going forward.
Well, it does smell great, so it's working. In your opinion, what makes for a great website? Because I love the Huron website, and I think it's actually how I first saw the brand. I think maybe you popped up on Twitter, but I love the colors. I think it's such a crisp website, but it looks rich. It's not like a Shopify like template theme. Like you feel like there's some real thought behind it, but it's not goopy. So what makes for a good website to you?
Yeah, and it feels like we've lived through every stage of website. So I can definitely give you kind of like the life cycle. Look, when we first launched, we were an art project. I think there's a scale right now between an art project and kind of a conversion machine. And hopefully the pendulum for us has swung over time more towards the latter. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, there are certain elements of a website that are fun, engaging, movement, video, hover state imagery. It's all really great, but it doesn't really matter unless people are purchasing. So 100%. We've ripped apart our site 200 times to figure out like what are the bare bones necessities to get someone the information that they feel is compelling enough to make the purchase. And we've tried literally everything. And I think it's through maniacal trial and error and A/B testing and holdout groups. Like there's a lot of math that goes on behind the scenes that actually creates the art. And for us, what was really interesting to learn is just the very utilitarian nature of our consumer in this category, right? It's like, oh, body wash that has a bunch of 5-star reviews and seems to smell great, like done. Like, I don't need anything else. So it's figuring out what is the right breadcrumbs of information that's mission critical to the purchase versus what is kind of like noise and excess content and excess copy. Like, does our body wash PDP need a playlist? Probably not. Like,
I'm not a fan of the playlist.
If it slows down the site by 0.0003 seconds, like that matters. And we've tried to figure out like what is that happy medium between storytelling, allowing our brand voice to kind of come through and establish an identity, but all really focused on getting consumers across the finish line.
I always say it's not form or function, but if I did have to pick one, I would pick function. Because like if you're too precious about it and it has to be so beautiful, and then it makes you scared to test or scared if the math is telling you one thing, but it's not as pretty as it was before. Like I personally don't care. I just want it to make people really rich. So
yeah.
All right. Where do you find your inspiration? Or is there a piece of media, a podcast, someone you follow that the millionaires could follow too or learn from that you would recommend?
Other than your newsletter? Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's not me.
I think that's where we draw the line.
Yeah.
Okay, there's so much great content out there. At times it's like, you know, I'm weeks behind on this newsletter. There's 7 unheard podcasts here. I'm trying to think of the podcasts for me are kind of like are mission critical. I really like Nick and Moise's Limited Supply podcast. I think anytime you find an operator like Moise who's willing just to like be totally open kimono and say, here's what we paid, here's our cost of goods are, and our turnaround times are X, if you're ordering 500 units, like that is very rare. I think unfortunately, people oftentimes will put up a shield externally so that you understand how well they're doing as a brand and might shy away from some of those hardships or learnings or whatnot. I think he does that the exact opposite. I think he and Nick do a good job of kind of bouncing back and forth and bantering back and forth. I really like Nate Rosen's Checkout newsletter.
Yes.
Such a great job of covering a comprehensive overview of what's happening across consumer, but also like supply chain and funding and like a lot of other areas that people kind of shy away from. I think he checks all of those boxes. And then our team oftentimes will kick around Eli's newsletter just because consumer empathy is so important for us. And I think there's always ways to learn something new or improve upon an existing tactic that can make our overall experience better. And I think, you know, he's just done such a good job of immersing himself in that category, which as of a few years ago, people viewed as like, oh, that's something like I need to outsource like tomorrow. Now people are building their brands around the notion of consumer experience as we have, quite frankly. And I think it's really cool to see him kind of grow as kind of like almost like the top of the totem pole when it comes to CX and CS.
I think Eli should be the most famous. Like, he's so smart, and his newsletter, I think it shows the whole side of what happens like after the sale. And that's kind of all that matters these days, because if you can't retain that customer, then who cares? So yeah, huge fan of Eli, and obviously of Nick and of Moise and of Nate. So I very much agree with you. When you're thinking about new tech for Huron, how do you evaluate that tech against your goals? And like, are you hesitant to add new features and new apps, or do you just go for it?
Very hesitant. I'm very weary of needing a tool for the tools, which is just like, now we have things on 14 different channels. I don't even know how to track half of them. Do we need to install something that will aggregate all of this data? We'd like to go right to the source. And I think for us to adopt something new, it means 5 new people have to have their workflows interrupted with some new way, shape, or form of storytelling, communicating, measuring, tracking, whatnot. And it kind of becomes cumbersome. So like, we still use Google Drive, which I'm sure I'll get like 50 emails after this being like, I can't believe you're still using Google Drive. Like, let me tell you about X, which is totally fine. Yeah, fine. But I think for us, it's like, let's just focus maniacally on execution versus the tools that will help promote execution. Like, I'd rather just be in the weeds working than constantly looking for like one potential way to make things slightly more easier in this one-off edge case. Like, let's just do the work and get things done, and maybe worry less about the medium or the tools, but just the work end product. That being said, I'll completely contradict myself. I respond to all these emails. Like, I will look at all of these pitches, so long as it's not like, hey, triple space bracketed first underscore name. Like, that gets out of.
Oh yeah, absolutely not.
We're constantly like entertaining these things, but I think for us to take action, it's a little bit longer putt, just given resource constraints. And I mean, time's our most sacred resource, right? So we only get 24 hours in a day, no matter how much I'd like to change that. So we have to just be really thoughtful about how we're deploying that.
So online shopping happens on our phones. How are you putting e-com mobile first?
Everything
on Huron.
Everything we do dev-wise, everything we do site testing-wise, our traffic's 3-to-1 mobile. So it would be silly for us to test and develop anything outside of that ratio. So every mock we look at is mobile first. Every test we run is mobile first. We work with a great agency where we do a lot of design to test type work. But again, like, we're totally mobile optimization first, because you just have to be in this day and age. And if you're not mobile friendly, if you're not capturing SMS first versus like email on mobile, like, there's just so many things that I think brands could be doing slightly better to have pretty momentous impacts down the road in the not too distant future.
And then on retention, how do you think about retention for Huron, especially because it is a product that once you sell them, like, they really could use this for the next 10 years and keep coming back.
Totally. In a way, switching costs are very low, but also in a way, switching costs are very high. In the former scenario, we sell a commoditized product. So if you run out of body wash and you're going past a CVS, you could very easily walk in and buy Dove for Men. But I think when the bar can be very high is we think about how do we roll out the red carpet to folks to make them feel like they're buying from a brand, they're not buying body wash, right? So how do we humanize this experience? How do we invite them inside the brand walls? I saw someone in the Q&A, which I appreciate, like, why do you hate the word authenticity? I also hate the word community, because I feel like these are marketing buzzwords that just get thrown around because they're in vogue and they're kind of in the zeitgeist to be like, oh, like, maybe an investor's ears will perk up if like we travel community so many times. But we call our community the shower caddies.
Love. I did not know that. I love that.
We have a few thousand on email and almost 1,000 on Slack. And we talk about everything. We talk about new package design. We talk about new product pipeline. We talk about launch dates. We talk about early access. We talk about, hey, we're thinking about switching up our Instagram bio. Like, is this too heavy? Like, is this too much? That does 2 things. One, very critical brand learning points that we as a team of 5 could never collect, but if we can collect 3,000 of them, that's way more telling. B, I just have this hypothesis that so many people would love to be on the entrepreneurial journey, but for whatever reason, they're not going to take it. Timing doesn't make sense. Maybe they have a bunch of student loan debt. maybe they just had a kid and just like, it's just not going to be in the cards for them, which I totally respect. How can we invite them into our entrepreneur? And how can we kind of check a lot of the boxes on that front for them? And it's been super interesting to see how many people will lean in and like take surveys and like participate in focus groups. All to say is like really thinking about post-purchase and what that means for our business. We are a retention and post-purchase first brand. We like to say finish line first. Like if we have the honor of getting a consumer across the finish line and getting product to them, how can we make sure they never go anywhere else? And that for me is like something that's really, really impactful and really, really personal. So a lot of our marketing, comms, love strategy, you name it, has been developed kind of like that concept in mind.
I love that. And I want to be in the shower caddies and I want to vote on the packaging. So I will be hitting you up. I'll probably be one of the few women, but I don't care. I still get to
right.
I bought it. I get to be in it.
That's right.
It looks really fun. Okay, this is my last question for you. So what is on your wish list? Because here at Go to Millions, we're big shoppers. So outside of Huron, what are you trying to buy next?
Well, we just moved into a new apartment yesterday. Which, if anyone's ever moved apartments in New York, it's like eighth ring of hell. It's not an enjoyable experience. However, seemingly easy it goes. So we're in the fridge stock up mode right now. So probably like beverages, I'm guessing. That's probably a weird answer, but
no, I love it. Maybe some like poppy, Ollie's Pops, all of the fun waters.
All of the above. It's like we've eaten pizza and like drank tap water for like 10 straight days. Just like we already packed the plates. We haven't packed the plates. So like you need paper plates, Wilbur 12 plate. So there's like, so I got like a lot of food and beverage on my mind. So probably something.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, maybe a green juice. So I'm excited for your new journey.
It'll get some health in there at one point.
Perfect. Okay. And then please plug yourself and let everyone know where they can find you and follow you and help you later on.
Yeah, appreciate it. Twitter's probably the best place. Just add Matt Mullenax. They're usually just random thoughts. Like, if you forward this to 20 people, like you'll be entered in this giveaway. But like, all joking aside, I feel like I've been the beneficiary of so much tremendous mentorship over the course of my life. So many people have lent me 30 minutes here, an hour here, like so many close mentors who are so giving with their time that I try to give back however I can. And a lot of it is just through like random writings that I will put together. But I just promise to be super honest and transparent, but try to be as helpful as I can be. So if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out.
People are asking for your Twitter handle, so I'm going to spell it at MattMullenax.
Sounds like a prescription drug. My last name's been butchered for all of my life, but that's totally fine.
That's okay. People call me Airy, and it doesn't get old. I'm like still like not over it every time, so it's okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. I can tell everyone had a really good time, and you taught us so much. So we are really grateful for your time, and everyone have a beautiful day. And go follow Matt and buy Huron and smell good. And thanks, everyone. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. It was a pleasure talking with you. Keep up to date with Go to Millions by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. And if you learned something with us here today, tell a friend for me, will ya? Thank you again, and let's chat soon. Bye!